Nothing is better than me getting to watch you dance to the intro song. Hi, everyone. Big show tonight because it's the first time I'm filming with Jeffrey Crane Graham since Always Lola. That must be true, right?
It has to be true. I'm trying to think of any other. We used to host together at our old network, but
That's true.
yeah, that has not happened since pandemic times. So I think it is.
Wow. Well, everyone, this is the director, writer, the entire mastermind behind Always Lola, the movie that you guys have all been supporting all week long. Wow, it's the 1 week anniversary.
1 week anniversary. What a great time to chat with one of my favorite people.
I know we wanted to do this a week ago, but I was on a plane and then I saw you for 5 minutes, but then I was stuck in traffic. It was a whole thing.
It's fun to stretch out the release for let's milk it for as long as we can, you know?
Do you think that?
I really do because you never know if I'll get to do this again. I have a feeling that I will. If gun to my head, I would think this is definitely not my first movie, but I feel like you should do everything as if it's the last time you'll get to do it. And if this is the only time I get to release a feature film, I want to do press all year, like we might as well.
That's exactly how I feel. It's kind of bizarre because a lot of times I think when I work on projects, when it's done, I want nothing to do with it. It's
Mhm.
like you kind of purge it out and then you're like, nobody look at me, go away, just let this be done. There's something about this project that's made me want to just continue talking about it. And part of that is because I think I just really believe in it and love what you created. But the other part is because so does the world.
I
And I
know.
know that sounds
Yeah.
kind of shady, but like the more people are liking it, the more that I'm like, wow, this is so cool to talk about something that people actually like.
That's a really good point. If people didn't like the movie, I probably would have a different answer. So I think that's a great observation. That's very nice what you said about me working on the movie, but it's like it does feel like such a group. I think one thing I love about it being an ensemble movie is that like there's a whole team of us who are like so excited about it. And that's the other thing too, is like almost every review mentions the whole cast and like mentions how it looks and how it sounds. And there's something like so team sport oriented about indie film. And like that's another fun thing is it's like keeping me tied to all of you. And it's like 6 people I love so much. So
I think
that's
that's the
fun too.
first and only time I've ever heard you make a sports reference, Jeff.
You're right. It will be the only time.
This is like a team sport
It's
in
like
the
sports.
arts.
Yeah, that's right.
Movies are our sports. So for anybody who doesn't know, 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago, Jeff and I shot a movie. Jeff wrote and directed the movie Always Lola, and I starred in it. And Jeff and I knew each other years before that, which we can kind of get into tonight. We had done table reads for a while before that, and it took a minute to get it to actually be in this place. If you watch this show, if you've ever watched this show, you've heard me mention this movie. I've been talking about it legitimately for years before we even filmed it. I talked about it during the audition process. I talked about it during the table read process. Jeff and I used to do a table read show. We talked about it on that show together. So it's been a long time in the making. And finally, on Tuesday, everywhere VOD, you can rent the movie, you can buy the movie. I recommend you buy it. I've had several people told me they rent it and then they had to go back and buy it. So just buy it.
Oh,
Yeah,
thanks to those people.
for sure. Apple, Amazon, Google, it's all over the place. So please, if you haven't already supported this, please go support our little indie that could. I don't know why that is what I started calling it, the little indie that could.
I love the book. I love the reference. I'm down.
Like,
Chugga chugga.
choo choo. And you guys also were asking me to do a whole Q&A kind of thing on Always Lola. So I said, great. And I wanted to have Jeff on the show for a minute anyway. So he's on here to talk about this, to talk about the movie and to talk about the
Real
filmmaking
quick,
process.
I want to say about your show, I love Live at the Roxy. I tune in often, which is why I was dancing for the theme song. But in particular, Roxy, I never miss your top 10s. I love your taste.
They're
It's
coming.
One thing I actually miss about working with you every day was you were like my go-to taste buddy when it came to watching stuff.
Especially
So,
prestige television. When you and I like the prestige shows, boy, do we
yeah.
like them. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've just got, it's part of the reason we could talk more about it. But one thing I loved about both you and our whole team was I do think everyone on the Lola team had great taste, which was a helpful way that we all kind of were aiming toward the same goalposts. Another sports reference. But I'm a Live at the Roxy fan.
Which was that? Was it a
This one where you kick it far away and it's 3 points, and you kick it close and it's 1 point. It's football.
Yes, those are the rules of football. I
Yeah,
agree.
I'm so smart.
The Patriots fan of me just died a little bit inside, but it's fine because my team sucks this year, so I like your rules of football better
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
If you haven't been here before, if this is how you do it, streamlabs.com/Roxy Stryer, super chat in. The reason that creators prefer Streamlabs is because Streamlabs doesn't take that big percentage. YouTube does this thing where every year they say they take about 30% of the super chats, and then instead they take 50%. It's this really fun thing that Alphabet likes to do because they don't have enough money themselves. But if you want your money to go to actual creators, then please, oh, please show up on the Streamlabs. But either way, wherever you're writing questions, we appreciate it. We want to answer them. We want to answer whatever it is you guys are curious about. So if it's just kind of like how this all came to be, the indie filmmaking process in general, how Jeff got distribution for the movie, the highs and lows on sets. Other than that, we're just going to kind of talk about our experience. But if you have specific questions that Jeff and I can be helpful for, or at least entertaining, then we want to know. So, you know what? Jeff is so funny. I have this just sitting down here. I just keep looking at it.
That's you.
So,
Look at you.
this is not here because you are on the show right now. This is here because now this lives here. Now
I
this
know.
lives here as a reminder to me, and I just am like couldn't be happier about that. I cannot believe this is just my geek out moment. I'm sure you've had plenty. I pull up freaking Rotten Tomatoes and my face is there.
It's big. You know what's fun? If you go to Rotten Tomatoes, it's you and Candace on the poster, and then you know what? I was gonna say it's everyone else in the trailer thumbnail, but I guess it's not Karin, which is heartbreaking because she's such a big part of the movie.
Is that true? Oh,
It's funny. There's another trailer graphic we use, which is Sheldon and Corinne on the dock in that like night scene, which I
I do
love that
love that
scene. But
picture.
I try to, whenever I'm like putting together press materials, I try to make it so each actor has like a face on the things we do, just because it's such an ensemble film. But I gotta say, I love our art. I love that snapshot of you and Candace because I really think it's the kind of movie I would want to watch. Like I love feel good coming of age movies. And I think that snapshot says so much. Like it's a great moment between you two.
It reminds me of a less toxic 13 from this picture.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. It is kind of giving 13.
Yeah, which when I was 13, I just thought that that was the coolest vibe ever. And now to have like her smile on this, but just the juxtaposition of the two of us. I love this picture, and I like, keep it here. And when I pull up Rotten Tomatoes to see my face there, and not just my name talking about a movie, it is so different. It's kind of how you and I got into this space. Both of us,
Mhm.
we had jobs prior to that, but we found each other at AfterBuzz TV, and we did a lot of, for lack of better words, critiquing of other people's art for a long time.
Mhm.
I still do that. I still do,
Mhm.
like you said, my top 10 lists, or I saw Wonka yesterday, and I
I've
put
heard
out
it's
a
great.
review on that. It
But
was
you're probably not
cute.
allowed to say.
No, no, I can't. The embargo released it. I thought that it was good. It was cute.
Okay, I'm excited to see it. I like Timmy.
Yeah, he's great. It's super duper family friendly. It's
Okay,
not creepy eerie. It's kind of like a big fun Wonka.
Ernest.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And for those reasons, I thought that it was enjoyable for sure. It has a 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, which officially means it has a worse score than us. Our
I
movie's
think it
better.
must be worst
Uh,
movie.
but I think that's exactly where it should sit, right around that 79,
Mhm.
80% is perfect for that. But we talk a lot about a lot of movies and TV shows, and I think that you and I both do this thing where, because we are creators and know how hard it is to get to make something, we tend to love a lot of things
Mhm.
because it's
Yeah, I
just
think
so
that's
hard.
exactly right. Yeah, we were texting about this the other day where like I will say, and I want to say this respectfully, but if someone's immediate instinct is to be incredibly critical towards something they've watched, and there's some people like friends I have where I'm like, I suspect their reaction to this will be hating it or not liking it. I think sometimes it can make you read that you're just not a creative person because it's like once you've been through the whole process, you kind of reorient your mind to try to see the good or recognize the intentions of what the team was doing because no one sets out to make a bad movie. That might not be true. There might be a small percentage of people who are deliberately trying to make a bad film so that they can get some
Who?
heat, but I don't want to say any names, but I feel like there are some schlocky directors who are like our goal. But
Oh,
you know
okay.
what's interesting? You could almost argue that in their pursuit of trash, they're also trying to make something artful. Like they're trying to make something that's so specifically and deliberately bad that it still has something interesting to do. Like it's operating in an interesting way. So I think because of that reason, I try to at least understand what the goals were of the movie and like operate from that framework before I make a ton of opinions about it.
Yeah, I'm very much with you. And it's not just because we have been creators and are creators, but I also think I just kind of am that kind of human, and so are you, where
Mhm.
I would rather not think about what wasted my time watching it and think about the things that I enjoyed while I was watching something. But
Totally.
it's so different, Jeff, because we started doing that. Then we did unproduced table read together,
Mhm.
where you very masterfully crafted a show where we were reading scripts every week, which was very cool. Some of Hollywood's biggest unproduced scripts. And we were working together there. And I think it was during that process that you had a table read, you and Laura had a table read, your wife
Mhm.
and the producer of this film, at your house for what was previously called
What
uh,
We Bury was
What
the
We
name of the
Bury.
movie. Yeah,
Okay,
which
so
sounds like a horror movie. It's funny. I still kind of like that name, but I like Always Lola more, and it's a much more commercial name. The idea with What We Bury, if people have or haven't seen the movie, there's like this scavenger hunt element, and a lot of it is like about what Lola, like the secrets she's burying, but also like the secrets and feelings that the whole group is burying and refusing to let go of. So that was the idea, but that's kind of a pretentious like filmmakery response. And I actually have Always Lola is such a succinct, and I think like that also has multiple meanings across the movie. So I like that title a lot too.
I love it for many reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think that would be your choice, which totally makes sense.
But going back though, before we get to Always Lola, when it was what we buried, is that what we
I think
bury?
just Barry.
What we
Yeah.
bury, what we bury.
Mhm.
When did you write the first draft of this movie?
It's a good question. It's so funny, Rox, because I'm a fast-ish writer, but this just like spilled out of me. It was probably my fifth feature I had written, but I wrote it in like 2 weeks. I think I vomited it out in a week, and then did like a quick pass, and we read it pretty quickly after that. So I I think our first table read. I can look back at our emails. I should, but I think it would have been like January 2019. And I'd say I wrote it in the fall of 2018.
And then
Um,
we filmed in August of 2021.
I kind of put it in a drawer for a while. And I had this idea of making it, but in a weird way, it wasn't until the pandemic that I really felt the push to try to get it up on its feet. You know, it's something that Laura, so my wife is an executive producer of the film. She's a brilliant producer, huge part of why this happened. And also a great story brain and someone that was reading me throughout all of development. I think both of us looked at each other and were like, we can either, and I feel like Lady Gaga repeating that comment she made on that press tour, because I've said this in other interviews, but she actually phrased it so succinctly and beautifully, where she said, I think right now we have like two very hard choices in front of us. And one of them is to be 95 years old in a nursing home and still be talking about the movie we never made and just like feel regretful our whole life, or try to do it ourselves with no experience, a limited budget, and kind of a F it attitude. And both of those sound really hard, but I think like the regret one actually sounds harder. So we have to do it. There's no other choice.
So that made you know, Jeff, that you had to make a movie. But why this movie? You just talked about you had 5 other
Mhm.
scripts that you had written. And I think that for a lot of the rock stars are filmmakers or are aspiring filmmakers. And I
Mhm.
think for me included, it's extremely hard when you have so many stories inside to tell and you
Mhm.
have so many things that you want to share with the world, to be like, this is what I come out of the gate with. And sometimes it's so hard to tell that you actually never come out of the gate at all.
Right.
So what was the thing that made you think that this was the story to tell first?
Well, I will say I did write this with the intention of making it. So this is the first script I wrote that was like, I'm not going to sell this. No one's going to be interested in this. Like, this is we will fundraise some money, but mostly put like savings of my own into. And because of that, like I had very strict confines around writing it. Like I was like, it's a limited location movie and it's going to be 5 to 6 characters only. And like, there's a couple scenes where other characters creep in, but 90% of every frame of the movie either has all 6 characters in the scene or like partners. That's kind of how the structure of the scene or the structure of the movie operates, particularly with you, right? It's like your character is like the perfect microcosm of how I wanted to approach the page. Was I was like, they're either ensemble scenes or partner scenes. And the ensemble scenes are where people are going to like kind of mask what they really feel. And the partner scenes are where people are going to actually share what they really feel. So those were like the rules I set for myself as I approached the page. And then
Before you thought of a concept, Jeff. So that was the first thing
hmm,
that you thought of?
that's also a great question. I don't think so. No, I think limited location, limited cast, yes. I think as I started to unpack the story, I realized that those rules could help me write it. It's deeply inspired by the death of my friend Peggy, who your character is kind of loosely based on. And I this was all subconscious, but I had a friend recognize that like the 5 characters in the movie sort of represent the 5 stages of grief as they like interact with you. So Trey's character, played by Colin, is denial. Lee's character, Candace's character, played by Camilla's character, played by Candace, represents anger. Andrew's character, this is hard. I'm just going to say the names of the characters. Yep. Lee represents bargaining. Who's left? Riggs' character represents guilt, and then Catherine's character eventually represents acceptance. So what I didn't realize was I had like split my experience mourning Peggy into these different fractures, and those became the characters that like just told the story. So I think for anyone who's trying to write like a micro budget movie like this, like think about your own experience and think about maybe the most intense or traumatic times of your life, and think about like all the different versions of you that show up as you walk through that. And then those can become characters. Like let those emotions speak through people. And that's kind of how I approached it.
And that was something from the first draft on, or did it poured out of you and then you were like, okay, really must hone this to be more shootable, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I think it was always shootable because of the way I wrote it. I would say it was like much more heavy-handed. Like I'd say my early drafts are very overwritten. And then like the goal was just to pull away dialogue and like try to focus more on subtext. But like from a story perspective, there were small things I had to change, but like the general bones of the movie, like my favorite scenes were in that first draft. And again, like that never happens. So for you writer directors watching, like it's an exception that this was this way. Normally it's like you have a vomit draft, and I just hit my hand. Sorry, did you guys hear that like noise that echoed?
I did. It was awesome. It was like you gave yourself a drum roll.
Yes.
Vomit draft. Boom.
Like typically you have like a vomit draft.
Are you okay?
It hurts. I'm going to be honest. I'm faking it. But
everybody shake it off.
It's hurting. Normally there's like a...
Must remain calm on air. Don't panic.
Trying to keep my shit together, but I'm not an actor like Rox.
You're doing great.
Yeah. Typically the vomit draft is like a very different version than the final thing. But if you read earlier versions of the script, like most of the essential DNA is like still there. So
yeah, I think that the parts that changed, like you said, your dialogue was just super, super strong, Jeff. I think that is a huge strength of yours. But for the most part, from the day that I read it, which I think would be one of the earliest drafts of yours.
The earliest. Yeah, I mean like the earliest presentable draft.
Right. The earliest. Okay, I've spell proofed and gone through this. It was so good. It was one of those scripts that I couldn't forget. It happens sometimes when you read something and you're like, oh, I don't want to let this one go.
You have a couple like that too. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. For those of you guys also who don't know this, I think I've talked about this on the show before, but Jeff very kindly reads a lot of my scripts and also very kindly lets me read a lot of his scripts because Jeff is one of the strongest writers I know, and he gives unreal notes. And so when I was reading this, what I think people should like to do in life is you want to take advice and notes from people who you think are very talented in the area you want to be pursuing. And so after I read this script of Jeff's, I immediately started sending Jeff my scripts to be like, what are your notes on this? What are your notes on this? Because I really trusted him after this. But
Well,
going
you're a
back
great
to,
writer too, Rox. And I will say,
thank
it's
you.
just another piece of advice for people listening. I knew you were a great actress because of UTR, the unproduced table read show we did. But I also knew you were a very smart actor. And that's one thing that's true of our entire cast is it's 6 very, very smart people. And I think like that was always really important to me because I knew it was going to be kind of collaborative and scrappy. And I was like, I need people who are going to come to set with great instincts. You know, I wouldn't say like my directorial hand was super heavy on the movie because we had a lot of conversations in pre-production and prep as to what the movie would look like. When we got to set, I mostly let you guys fly because it's a group of 6 really smart actors, which made things easy.
So I want to get to set, and we will, but I do want to also still continue to talk about pre-production because
Mhm.
this was such a small you had such a small amount of people working on this movie. And so because of that, you had to have your hands all over this thing, which means that
Yeah.
you had to be dealing with a lot of different things at once, including everything in pre-production from
Mhm.
location to figuring out how you were going to shoot this and teaching a class to casting to the whole 9 yards. So, kind of just talking us through. So, you and Laura decide we're not going to be 95 and had not made the movie. Who knows how the fuck it's going to be, but we're going to make this movie. Okay, we're doing it. Then what?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think we started with locations. I feel like there is an element. I like to think of making a movie like planning a wedding. And if you think about the important parts of wedding planning, there's like certain benchmarks that like the timing really matters. So like getting your venue, you do that early because that's a huge ticket item. And once you lock that in, you kind of have the framework for what the event's going to be. So I think like we knew if we could get locations down quickly, we would at least have that. And like then if we lose an actor, we can at least get the new actor to the location we're shooting in.
But where did the partnership with Miami of Ohio come to be?
Mhm. Yeah. So for everyone watching, confusingly, I went to a school called Miami University, but it's in Ohio, which if you're from the Midwest, like is not that confusing, but especially for West Coasters, they're like, it's a satellite campus of the one in Florida. And I'm like, no, it's like a real school. And Roxy, it's a beautiful school. Roxy was there. Um,
I just cannot speak highly enough of Cafania.
yes.
Guys, I can't tell you enough about this coffee shop that all the people in their school go to, Cafania, if you ever go to Miami of Ohio. But yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean, your campus is gorgeous. But growing up in Boston, I had friends who went to
Yeah,
Miami of Ohio. So I
you're
knew it's
right.
an unreal school.
It has very East Coast vibes too. Like it kind of has like a. I mean, I've been to Boston Rocks finally because we'll talk about that later. But walking through like Old Town Boston, I was like, this reminds me of where I went to college. But I think it was interesting because I was thinking through. I was originally looking at locations in California, and I was looking. I think like Airbnbs, like large Airbnbs, have become a common destination for micro budget movies. There's a film that Roxy and I both love called Shiva Baby that was actually shot in an Airbnb. So I was looking at Airbnbs in California, but it
Because you
didn't
would
give.
think it would be cheaper, Jeff, right, than bringing your entire cast and crew to a different location. Initially, you would think, let's
Mhm,
shoot this in LA. All the
right.
actors are based here.
And crew, like we had our DP based in LA too. So I was like, it seemed crazy to move the production, but Laura, actually, this is again the brilliance of my wife and producer, was like, let's just like open our mind a bit and like reconsider other options. And my university is always eager for the opportunity to like bring Hollywood to it. It has a communications program that's pretty good, but inevitably, when you're far from a coast, it can be hard to kind of connect the school to the university or to the industry. So they were really excited about the idea. And all of a sudden we started thinking like this is a university kind of in the middle of nowhere. We'll be there in the summer, which means it won't be crowded. There will be like housing and space and sort of an ecosystem to put the movie up on its feet. And there will be like bars and libraries and dorms and a police station and all these acres of rural land that Oxford, Ohio is surrounded by that like maybe we could fake as a campsite. So Laura and I went in a location scout. I connected with the university. we did a table read for the university, and all of a sudden it was kind of happening.
I don't even think I knew that part, that you did a table read for the university. What happened?
Yeah, it was funny, Rox. I mostly cast close friends of Sheldon's. And did you
Cool.
know Sheldon at that point?
Sheldon started hosting at AfterBuzz,
Yeah.
so I don't know about the point that you're talking about, but probably. But did you do it in Ohio, or did you do it
Mm-mm.
on Zoom for
We
them?
did it over
Cool.
Zoom. Yeah. So we just did like a Zoom table read, and I'm trying to think. Andrew was there, and Sheldon was there, and Colin was there. The three.
3 dudes.
And then it was a lot of Sheldon's actor friends. Like I was like, "Can you help me cast this?" Just because he knows great actors.
Cool.
And at that point, Sheldon was kind of like on, especially with the Miami thing. I think like
Because he
he's
went
an
there.
associate producer on the movie too, because he's been on it kind of the whole time. He helped me cast it.
And for those of you guys who don't know, Jeff went to school with him. So when he's saying
Yes, thank
Sheldon was
you.
there, yeah.
Yep, and
And same
Colin,
with
who's also in
Colin.
the movie. Yeah. And I wrote the parts for both of them. It's funny because as I look back, I think I wrote the parts for everyone who's in it. Four in particular. I think I've told you this, but like every time I describe Lola, I was like, I think like when I picture who'd be in the role, like it's kind of like a Roxy type. Like I was like always thinking of you subconsciously. Same with Andrew. And eventually it's like, of course, that's how it wound up because I was like subconsciously thinking of you all for the role.
So you guys were able to kind of lock in your locations and figure
Mhm.
out with Miami of Ohio that it was cool to be shooting there during the summertime, and
Mhm.
that was a good time period. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but like you exchanged teaching a class so that you could be more integrated in the school, or so that we'd have extras or something.
Yeah, I just adjunct. I was just an adjunct professor at the school, which was great, and I feel like they were helpful to like get me that position. But it was actually more just that like the adjunct rate I made, which isn't much because teachers are underpaid in this country. No shade to the school. That's just the nature of late stage capitalism. But we just took that money and put it
Woohoo!
right back into the film. Was basically so yeah, it wasn't like an official, but like it was just like this
Cool.
is like here's our lenses, so and then the students, which is fun, are background actors. There's only 2 scenes with background actors. There's a scene in a bar, and there's a scene, what's the other one? Cafeteria. It's at Cafeteria. So there's a coffee shop scene and a bar scene, and we do have my students are background actors in both of those scenes, which is kind of fun.
I
So
thought that everybody, because we also had a lot of local hires for the
mhm.
crew, and all of the Ohio people are so nice, Jeff.
We're a nice state.
What is up with that? Everybody was lovely.
They were amazing. These were all like recent grads who just love movies and were asked to do so much more than they were trained for, or so much more than they were paid for, to be honest, because that's the nature of a micro budget movie. And all of them just crushed it. It was like we had the best crew. It was small and mighty.
So how did you go about that? So now you have the movie, you have your location, you know when you're shooting it, and now you have to essentially staff it.
Mhm.
How do you usually, sometimes like a DP will bring on a team. Obviously, you had your DP out here, so he didn't know all of the Ohio people. What were the next steps for you there?
Great question. So my DP, Roxy knows, is a genius, and if you all seen the movie, it looks great. And I will take credit for directing and having ideas about composition and working with the actors, but like anything about like the lighting, excuse me, and like the look is 100% the brilliant mind of my DP, AJ Young. And I will say, I also brought him on early to Rox because he's just like a department expert. Like, even though he's officially a director of cinematography on the movie, he also lit the movie and like helped me put my grip and electric package together and like walked me through like what an anamorphic lens is and like what
Yeah,
a
because it's
Joker
your
light
first
is.
time.
It was my first time like directing something real. And typically people will direct shorts, and I skipped that part. I directed like a really low end web series, but that was like with 2 soft boxes and like Canon D Mark V's, which again is like totally valid. I'm looking at it making another super small movie, maybe even smaller than Lola, and like doing it that way because like why the hell not? But I'm also working on something bigger too, right? Like I think it's nice to have multiple projects and think about different trajectories. But AJ he really, really walked me. It was film school for me. And he was there the whole time. And in terms of the crew, Miami University has a communications program, and their capstone for the students, which is like their final big project, is to put together like a mid-budget short film with all the fixins. So like real lights, real grip package, real electric. So those students kind of learn that process too. So all essentially 5 crew members were Miami graduates who had just finished school and were like ready to start kind of their adult life, but in that summer transition period, which is kind of what the movie is also about. But they came in and just gave me 2 weeks of their time based on the knowledge they had learned from that capstone class, and they were amazing.
And what, I don't even know the answer to this. What did you do to cast the movie? Was this on Actors Access LA Casting? I know that you had cast the 2 guys.
Yep. So the only role of the 6 main principals that I cast outside of people I knew is Karin Mea, who plays your twin sister in the movie Catherine. She's like an Oscar-winning actress. She's like so good.
She's so ridiculously good. Jeff, do you know that her and I just shot another movie where we played sisters?
Are you serious?
Randomly.
Wait, it was a coincidence?
How bizarre.
Gosh, it's so funny because like as freakish as that is, you two have such crackling chemistry. I'm like kind of not surprised, but
so cool. From I was on the set of, brief aside, I was on the set of Crust, and I met somebody there named Matt Leal, who was going to be directing this movie, and it like he had cast Corinne already in the movie and was looking for somebody to play Corinne's sister, and literally then cast me, and I was like, we just played sister. This is just the weirdest thing. We just shot it. It was
I can't wait to see it. I mean, like, yeah, she's a really special one, but I found her just, I think it was through Actors Access. And I auditioned probably 300 people for the role of Catherine. And you know what's funny? I did bring in Actors Access tapes for Camilla and Lee as well. I think like Andrew, I will say actually, Andrew, I always had in mind for the role. Candace Cruz, who plays Camilla, is someone I knew and always really, really liked as a person. Like I'd worked with her at AfterBuzz, incredible host. She's great on a red carpet. Like she was always reliable. And then her audition like blew me away. And I had to really check myself because I was like, am I just casting Candace because I really like her as a person? But her audition always made me cry every time I watched it. And then in chemistry reads, she was just like jaw-dropping. So I felt lucky that she was as good of an actress as she was.
What is your advice for people, Jeff? Because I think a lot of people, especially in their first few films, first film, second film even, put their friends in the movie, even if they audition them, because you auditioned me and then I had several callbacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that means that sometimes you book it, sometimes you don't. And most people just know that that's the way the industry goes. It doesn't mean you're good or bad. It just means you might be what they're looking for or not. What's your advice for directors out there or people who are making indies who have to be kind of their own casting director in this? Mm-hmm. How do you talk to your friends? How do you go about auditioning them for the part or telling them that they did not get it or vice versa?
Yeah, I think like the thing with especially on-screen acting is I want to say it's all about talent, but some of it is this invisible, intangible thing, which is what's so heartbreaking about this industry is like, I saw 50 auditions for Catherine that were really good. And like, I wanted to tell all those actors like, hey, just because you're not getting this part doesn't mean you're not like a really talented, great actor. It's just that like, it's kind of like making a stew. You're like tasting the ingredients and they all taste delicious, but like this needs paprika, not salt. And like salt's amazing, but just not for this particular stew with all these other pieces that are already here. And like, that's nothing to do with the talent of the salt. It's just like the ingredient we need. I think if you're writing a movie and you have your friends in mind, I think like running them through the audition process is a great way just to make sure it's a good fit for both of you too. Like the other thing is you would never want to put your friend in a position where you're putting them in a movie that's not going to serve them either. Like that's not helpful for the actor either. So even though like once I brought my friends in, I wanted to run you guys through the whole washing machine because like I wanted you to feel like you had earned it. You know what I mean? not for any pride reason, but like for just so you could feel on set like it wasn't like a favor I was doing you, right? It was like your unbelievable talent and hard work and chemistry brought you here. And yeah, I think I just wanted to make sure too. I was like, even though I love these people and I think I want them in the movie, I'm putting a lot of money into this and I only get one chance to do it. And I hope this isn't unreasonable to say, but it's like, I would rather have an awkward couple months with a friend in an amazing movie than like ruin a movie for both of us because it wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think that's completely fair. It's just something that I think people don't realize that you still have to navigate, even if you're like, okay, I'm going to put my bunch of my homies in a movie. Sometimes that's more difficult than not doing that. And so
I know it happens with big A-listers too. Like I'm a big fan of Manchester by the Sea, which is like probably the most Boston movie ever. But Casey Affleck was originally going to be played by Matt Damon or John Krasinski. I can't remember, but they're both producers on it because they like brought it to Kenneth Lonergan and set the whole thing up. And then Damon was like, I'm not right for this. And it's like that heartbreaking realization. But it's like he stayed on as a producer. But again, Matt Damon's one of the most talented actors on earth. It's just like one of those things where it wasn't quite right. And it's a hard thing about this business,
Before we get into actual production, I do want to take some of your guys' comments, questions, all of that in the chat, in the Streamlabs, streamlabs.com/Roxy Stryer. Thank you for sending it in. Let's start with ZB. ZB just said Roxy appreciation. Thank you, ZB. Jake Yakoveta said, first off, fucking salute to both of you for this project. But Rox, you let your homie Lauren scoop you with the interview with Jeffrey first. Wow. I did see that. How was going on, Lauren? She's just the freaking best.
She is the best. Yeah, we had fun. I'm like such a fan of Lauren. I like her podcast too. If anyone doesn't listen, it's called Unleash Your Inner Creative. And it's kind of a balm to any creative to just really cool guests on that show. So worth checking out.
Mike Joyce in the chat says, when can we get the Blu-ray? I want to add Always Lola to my Blu-ray collection. So I'll broaden this question. And Jeff, I know you don't have all the answers because you, in fact, are not the distributor of this movie. But I have been getting bombarded with, where's the Blu-ray and when can I watch this overseas? What do we know?
So what we know is that any English-speaking territory, so America, Canada, the UK, Scotland, Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, all have the movie. Certain European countries have it, but not all of them. Like I think the Netherlands has it and Scandinavia has it. If you are in a foreign country, Google it because you might have it. I know that Germany and India don't, which stinks because I've heard a number of folks from India wanting to watch it. But here's what my distributor said. If you're in a territory that doesn't have the movie right now, you probably will get it eventually. But in the meantime, if you email press@alwayslolafilm.com and you're like, hey, I'm in the Philippines and I really want to watch the movie, if we can get enough of those, we can actually use those as ammunition to push our distributor to get it up in those territories. So in a couple of weeks, Rox, we should connect and like figure out who's DM'd you. And like, I've been tagging Good Deed in comments because we might be able to get it up in other territories sooner.
I started tagging them too. And I was like, I don't want to be annoying to the distributor, but also I want everybody who wants to see this movie. The whole point is that we worked for years on this. Jeff worked even longer than those years that I worked on this. And all I want is for people to be able to see it. Anybody who is willing to and wants to see this, I want to be able to see it. I know Jeff feels the same way. So I don't want to annoy anybody, but I would like Good Deed to know how badly our fans all over the world would like to see this.
Totally. And then in terms of physical media, because I would also love a Blu-ray. I think if the movie does well enough in sales right now, they'll do a small physical media push. It's another thing too, Rox, where like maybe in the new year we could like corral the rock stars to see who would want a DVD, and if we get a list, that would be enough. Because I think if we can pre-sell Blu-rays, we might be able to do it. But I want it on my shelf, and it's that thing too, where like, we both know we're living in like a terrifying world where things that are streaming just vanish. So luckily We have like 7 guaranteed years with Good Deed right now, and the movie's so small with so few producers on it that like it's not going anywhere. But still, there's that feeling of like if you have the physical media, you have the physical media. So
This is unrelated, well, related to what you just said, but a little bit of a tangent. Do you remember the show called Lindsay? It was Lindsay Lohan's reality show on OWN. And the entire premise of the show was supposed to be following Lindsay
yes, I
Lohan's life.
remember. No, I do remember because she went on
And
Oprah to talk about it.
and then Lindsay will not come out of her home to film the
Mhm.
show. So the whole show is shooting her door and then being like, Lindsay, you signed a contract, you have to come out, until there's finally one episode where she sits on a couch with Oprah. Oprah Winfrey sits down and is like, Lindsay, what's up? You wanted to do the show. You signed this contract. Why won't you come outside? And Lindsay's like, Oprah, I just don't know. I don't know. Jeff, it's nowhere. That show doesn't exist anywhere. It went away from streaming, and I cannot find it anywhere. And
My
that
favorite
is
thing about you, Rox, is that like this is why I love you, because your taste again spans such a wide spectrum. Because like that's also true of the Martin Scorsese produced show Vinyl on HBO. And you're like, do you remember Lindsay on OWN? And I'm like, yeah, I also remember that one. But same with Vinyl. So
what you're saying is absolutely true. Could I have picked more prestigious projects to talk about? Yes. There's so many that have gone away. All of a sudden, off of Warner Brothers disappears everything that I've ever loved. But
I
let me
know.
tell you how many years I've been searching for Lindsay. Years and years.
I
Okay, so
love you.
finally we have everything, all the pieces are in place. We're flying to set and we are about to shoot in Ohio for a couple of weeks. The number one comment that seems to come out when people hear that this movie was shot in 11 days is, holy shit, what?
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about, I'm going to say, the balls to shoot this movie in 11 days? Like how did that come about?
I mean, that's kind of a question for you, right? I mean, like that's the truth is it's just like I knew our schedule and I'm like, well, we're going to do these pages, but I think again that's my advice about like smart conscientious actors. I mean, you had the balls to agree to an indie that was shot in 11 days. You talk about that.
Yeah, but I think, Jeff, the thing about actors is that we will agree to, if we like a piece of work, we'll agree to anything.
Mhm.
That's the truth. No, that's not something that actors like to admit because, you know, we all want to play hard to get or whatever. But if you
Right.
read a script and you like the script, you will do it. You will pay to do it. You will do
Mhm.
it for free. You will do it with no sleep. You will do it, like the people who care the least on set about the when you break for lunch or about the
Right.
timing of
Being
anything
in
are the actor. The
right.
actors are, they just want to do this so badly because you have to be absolutely out of your mind to want to be an actor. It's a crazy idea to want to do. There's no reliability or consistency or anything that you need in order to be a sane person. So because of that, it wasn't, I didn't really bat an eye at it until after the movie was done and
I
everybody
know.
was like, you just shot that in 11 days. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what was asked, 10 pages a day. And so
Mhm.
every single actor came to set knowing every word of the entire
Right.
script. So it was less, I think, less ambitious on our part only because it feels like more of a given, and more ambitious on your part because weather or
I know you're right.
equipment malfunctions or anything. Like, what were you just like, okay, this is what we can do with this budget, or this is how long I have my players for, or how did it
Yeah.
happen?
I will say, I think 12 days isn't even 13, maybe, but that's not like super uncommon for movies this size because there's something kind of magical about that 2 week window where you don't feel like you're asking for too much of people's time. You get like one weekend off and you shoot for 6 days each week, and then we all go home. And once you start pushing into a third week, to me, there's like you kind of cross a threshold of it feels much bigger. Like it feels like that third week adds a significant amount of like labor, and it's hard to kind of exactly articulate why, but I sort of just knew it was like 2 weeks or bust, especially with our crew and like our budget. I wanted to pay as many people as I could, and that was kind of what our budget allowed. But you think about it, a movie like Whiplash was shot in 18 days. Like I think in general, production schedules are just tightening and tightening, and because we were a limited location feature, it's almost like we shot it like TV. we were like block shooting basically. And it was so location based that like, a network drama like Law and Order SVU will do 8 to 10 pages a day, but they'll just shoot all of the precinct stuff in one day. And that's basically how we did it with like all the barn stuff and all the pond stuff. So it was definitely a puzzle, but because again, the cast was so smart and reliable, I just like knew we could do it.
What was and this is a question I'm sure you probably keep getting, but what was harder than you thought it would be about shooting this? And what was your favorite part or favorite day on set? We'll give Jeff a second to think about this. You guys remember streamlabs.com/Roxy Streyer. Send in your questions, whether it's to Jeff about specifically this project, future project, indie filmmaking in general, the craziness that is the 11 days. You guys in the chat are really going off about the 11 days, which I love to see. Awesome. Okay, I'm back to you, Jeff.
I think my favorite day on set was, I feel like that night that it was an intense night, but like when you got to do the Oscar speech, and I feel like the shoot had gone really well up until that point. And like, I think all of us were starting to feel the buzz of like, this might be good. I think we knew throughout the whole production it was going to be good, but like that might have been your wrap day. Cause you wrapped
my wrap day was the last thing that I shot was with Andrew lying down.
Yeah. That night felt good because we got to do a lot. Like we got to do the Oscar speech. We did like, I think we maybe did the bear scene. Or no, that might have been the next night. I just remember the vibes were good that night. And I was thinking like, I think this movie might be good.
Is it all blurring for you? Do you feel like
it's hard to, truthfully, the whole shoot, this never happens on first features. So my next movie will probably be a shit show, but like set was like pretty smooth. There was a couple tough days, but like that's expected. I think the hardest day, you know what? I'll say this. It was artistically very challenging. There's a very dramatic scene halfway through the film where like a big secret about Lola's death comes out among the 5 friends. And we had to shoot it probably like 18 times because of coverage. It's basically the 5 characters who aren't Roxy all have a very important epiphany in that moment. And so they all have close-ups and like there's very important, meaningful shots that we needed of each actor. So they all had to do it over and over and over again. And I just felt kind of mean being like, do it again because it's such a hard scene.
So I was not on set that day. And I very much so any day that I wasn't filming or any scene I wasn't filming, I was still on set all day because I love filmmaking and Jeff allowed me to be there. So I was always going to be there for every scene that I was able to watch because I think that that's the best way to learn. And also like I'm in Ohio for this. So what else? This is the most amazing thing ever. But that day I didn't go to set for anybody who's seen the movie. For very specific reasons, I thought that it would be not ideal for me to be on set and not helpful for people for me to be on set. But I remember everybody coming back from set, and it was like something had exploded. I mean, people were just so drained and tapped, and not because anything was done wrong, just because of the nature of the scene. And I think that you guys had said you had to, because of all the coverage, you had to do 22 different shots, runs of and it's like, fuck.
I know we did the full scene each time. We did some pickups at the end, but I'm really pretty proud of the scene, to be honest, because it's kind of like a ping pong game where like a lot is happening story-wise. And each of those characters like has to do a ton in that scene. And because of that, it wouldn't have been fair. Like Andrew kind of closes the scene. He buttons it at the end. But like, it really wouldn't have been fair to him to just be like, all right, everyone else can leave set. And like, then Andrew, you just do your scene, like with stand-ins or like, we'll feed you the lines. To give people a little bit of behind the scenes, like with filmmaking, we only had one camera. So getting coverage is redoing a scene and making sure you have all the shots. So you have options in the edit. Like if a character needs a close-up moment here, you want to make sure you get that close-up in your coverage. But it's helpful for the actors to do the scene with the context of everyone else on set so that you can have the full emotional experience. So all the actors were all in because they wanted to gift each other the privilege of being as generous and in it for each other as they were for themselves. So they all did it all out every time. And it was just like really hard. Yeah, not bad hard, but just hard.
For anybody who can't picture like why something like that would be hard, anybody who's ever cried before, you know how after you're crying for like 15 or 20 minutes, you have a pounding headache?
Mm-hmm.
So that for 12 hours.
And you like
That's
dry out too.
yeah,
Like I feel like people are
totally.
just chugging water to have tears. Like it was I
Yeah.
mean, it was also it was so cool for me to watch people work. I mean, like everyone, that's the fun thing about directing is I say it's like you kind of get to watch the movie before the movie comes out. And I've thought often in Video Village, like, I love this movie. Like, I love these actors. And that was just so fun to watch you all crush it.
Was there anything on set where you were like, okay, next time I'm absolutely not doing this?
There are things I will do. The one crew member we didn't have was like a prop master. And the number of times we needed Skittles, like there's a very important subplot that involves Skittles. And when I was in pre-production, I was like, there's not that much stuff in the movie. And Laura's like, it's about a scavenger hunt. Like the movie's about things. Like probably should have had a prop master. So just we had enough brain space for almost everything, but I don't feel like we had enough brain space for like things and bags. And like, that's what I would have changed.
Was there any continuity issues? I can't think of anything that was an issue. I might
We
have
got
missed
the
something.
most and it was like a breeze. There's one thing. In fact, if you look, you can probably catch it. And I don't mind sharing, but I don't know if you remember at that campsite, just for a little behind the scenes, we were staying at this Airbnb that had a bunch of property and like its own little campground owned by the two world's best people, Jim and Sue Killey, that I would describe as like kind, sort of like hippies who used to be professors at Miami. And he's a sculptor. Like he's like he makes sculptures out of like recycled materials. That's his art. So there was this giant horse made out of like wire. I don't know if we might have gotten rid of it by the time you got to set, but
I don't know.
there's one scene where like the horse pops in and then pops out, like in the distance. But I think
funny.
that's it.
So, well, you would have a prop master in the future. It sounds like you kind of didn't need one.
Yeah, we didn't. I mean, we wasted time. There was a couple times I'm like, we probably could have gotten 2 more takes if this had been here. And again, it's no one's fault. Actually, it's mine because we didn't have a prop master. So that's what I would change.
Get in your questions now. We won't be here that much longer. Streamlabs.com/Roxy Stryer. Super chat in anything for Jeff in particular, myself on Always Lola. Okay, so the movie wraps, and this is where I leave you. You go home and immediately jump into it. You take time off. What's the jam?
It was interesting on set, Rox, because all of us kind of had the question of like, what's post? And like, I had the same question because again, we're such a micro budget feature. I have like my diplomatic answer and my honest answer about cutting the film. My diplomatic answer is like, I'm going to go ahead and take early passes as director's cuts because we don't have a bunch of money and like, it's a chance to just at least get the footage assembled and then we can pass it off to an editor. But my like truthful, transparent, kind of vulnerable answer is that I really, really wanted to cut the movie because I wanted the experience of cutting a feature. And again, I was viewing this as like my film school. And I know that this is the only time in my entire career we'll all have full creative control over everything about the project. And I can't wait to have an editor on the next one. It's actually better if you're a writer-director to have at least a co-editor in there with you because they'll be more objective. But with this one, whether or not it was right or wrong, I just really wanted to do it. So
So you did.
So I did, yeah. And I got into the footage probably 2 weeks after wrap. And I was obsessive. I mean, I was working a part-time job at the time, but I was only sleeping 4 hours probably every night just because I would finish work at like 8 and then cut till like 2 or 3 in the morning every day. I think Laura was like a little worried about me, but I was having so much fun. And I actually love editing because to me, it's kind of like the fun part. I mean, set is so fun, but it's stressful, you know?
Have you talked at all, Jeff, about editing the situation that happened on the podcast and the person who reached out to you? Have you spoken at all about any
No,
of the editing process? Can you
this was
speak about that at
incredible.
all?
I can totally talk about it.
Cool.
I'm not gonna use her name because even though I would love to, she's like very humble. But and we're live. I probably could, but I'll pin it in the comments if she's okay with me sharing. But I co-host and produce a podcast with the co-writer of the Pixar movie Inside Out. So lucky me. I mean, like that's pretty much agreed, like is one of the best screenplays of the 21st century. But her name's Meg LaFauve, and her co-host also like a remarkably successful writer. She's an Emmy-nominated showrunner. And we have a pretty big audience. And I reached out to our community. The show's called The Screenwriting Life. And I reached out
And
to
you
our
guys go to
listeners.
festivals, and people are obsessed with your show. I've
It's fun.
listened before
People
too, and
really
it's
love the
great.
show, which is it's been a very kind of like you, Rox. It's a very lucky thing to have supporters. It's like kind of what gets us through hard times. So for everyone who's in the chat, I know I'm speaking for Roxy when she says like it's so meaningful and helpful to have you all on the train with us.
Truly.
I reached out to our Facebook community and I was like, hey, I'm cutting a feature I wrote and directed, which like I know is not advised. I need an objective eye, particularly if you're an editor, to take a look at this. And this woman responded and was like, hey, like I love the podcast. I have some studio editing experience. Like I'd be happy to take a look. I go to her IMDb. She's cut 72 movies, and one of them, I would argue without any hesitation, is the best comedy of the century.
She is massive.
She's
Like
massive.
massive. I mean, as
And
good
she
as you
was
get.
just like, she was like, I'll take a look. And then I went to her IMDb after I sent it, and I was like, oh my God. Like I just asked Martin Scorsese to watch my direction. And she got back with 16 pages of really warmly phrased, generous edit notes. It was funny. She emailed back. She's like, hey, I love the movie. First of all, she's like, I can tell there's a great feature in here, but I have a lot of notes. Do you want them? And I was like, yes. And so it
Okay,
was the
but
best.
pausing there for a second, Jeff, was
Yeah.
part of you like, no?
You know what? What's great about editing, Roxy, is like the notes don't hurt nearly as much. Because with writing, it's really hard sometimes to get notes because it's like, what if the movie were actually in space? And you're like, well, that means that every page doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
And
but sometimes
then,
with editing, the notes are like, what if this scene had this line of or this thing in it? And it's
but
like,
she was an
well,
editor.
but
So her
she's an
notes,
editor, right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
her notes were like so clinical and smart where she'd be like, flip these scenes or like, I know you don't think you have an option here, but if you pull this sound, and it was like, I mean, I gave a puzzle to the world's best puzzle solver.
Right.
And she did it for free. She walked me through 7 cuts just to be a nice person. And she's, you know, what's cool. She's a writer too. And she's been editing for decades. And she's like, but I finally am like chasing my dream. And so I read her, which is nice. I feel like we have a little bit of a exchange, but she's also just like a good friend now.
So that means
But
that when she writes scripts that she'll send them to Jeff and then he will read them and help
mhm,
with notes or whatever on that.
yeah,
That's awesome.
it's amazing.
And so when she gave you those notes and then you started implementing them and working with her and doing all of that, did you immediately feel like, oh, holy shit, okay, this is moving in the right direction?
This is another funny answer. I'm going to share a story, which is Roxy very kindly held a screening. This is something I should probably not have done, but I was like, guys, the movie's done. It's finished. Like, I have the cut. And I brought
This is
it to your...
pre the editor.
Yeah, this is I almost just said her name, but I brought it to your place, and I was like, it's finished. It's perfect. And it wasn't like a bad cut, but it was a rough cut. And I thought it was a fine cut.
It was
And how did you all feel?
It was with all the cast and with Laura, right? That's the only people that were there. You,
Mhm.
the cast,
It
and
was
Laura.
8 of us. Yeah.
The thing was, the way that Jeff had pitched it was that this was the cut. And what I felt when I watched it was the movie. There's a great movie in here, but it is not
Here.
it's not the cut. So I
Mhm.
hope this isn't the cut.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The screening was interesting. It was interesting because also I will say that, not to say that some of the other actors in this aren't multi hyphenates, because they absolutely are. You know, a lot of us met hosting, but I have done this exact thing many times where I've screened a movie's first cut, and that's what it felt like. And so it felt like screening the first cut of a movie where you're like, "Oh, that's fucking awesome."
Yeah.
But it was I don't know. I'm grateful that you were aware enough to be like, "Oh, okay. Maybe it's actually not the last cut of this."
Yeah, I
Maybe
was. Well, I like sensed that night. I was like, I have some work, which is fine. I feel like I had like a tough night, but that's getting notes. And none of you gave me notes, but I could tell. I could just tell the energy wasn't like this is done. But what's funny, Rox, is because editing is so gradual, it's almost like boiling a frog in water, where it's like you don't really notice the changes. It is hard for me to see.
Whoa, it's like boiling a frog in water.
There's that expression that's like a frog in hot boiling water. Like if you put a frog into boiling water, it'll just leap right out. But if you put a frog in cold water and heat it up slowly, it won't notice and it'll die. And it's a
Oh.
metaphor for our lives, where like if we like started working an 18-hour work week right off the bat, we would notice. But if we like slowly ruin our own lives, like we won't. It's a
I like
metaphor for
that.
like a lot of things, but I think because of the nature of the cut, like I'm just too close to it to see big differences. So other people telling me that they were there was what I needed.
But now when you think about it, do you see the big differences, or you're saying that it kind of feel that the both cuts feel the same to you?
It's so weird, but they kind of feel the same. And that's
Huh.
another reason you need an editor, like, which is great. I'm so grateful. It's the whole thing is just one globulous jelly for me in the best way, but it is hard for me sometimes to like separate the writer, the director, the editor, and like my past, because it's all like just cooked into the stew, you know?
Yeah, I remember at one point, I think you said to me, I hope you don't mind that I'm sharing this, Jeff, but I think you said to me, like, I I don't know what it's I've watched this 5,000 times now, I think I hate it.
I know. It's like I don't know if I like it. Honestly, it's been
This is
nice
when
to release.
we were doing ADR stuff, and you were
Yeah.
like and I was like, "How are you feeling about it?" And you were like, "I don't know, I've watched it 100 times, I think I hate it." I was
I
like,
know. Yeah.
"No, this is awesome." Like,
I needed that at that time. And that's what's been so fun about releasing it is like reviews are good. I'm like, okay, people like it. I will always love it, but I'm like, do I love the experience? Do I love the cast? Or do I like the movie?
what do
Because
you think
it's
the answer to that is?
I like the movie. I really believe if I were to watch this movie at a festival, I'd be like, that was great. And it's also like this is my type of movie. Like, there's a reason I wrote it, right? Like, I love coming of age indie dramedies, but like, I really think if I were to see it at a festival, I'd be like, that was really lovely. I think I would like it. So, what do you
I
think?
think I would feel the exact same way. I like hearing the comparisons people are making. It's a genre I love.
Mhm.
I think that myself aside, I think that the other actors are fucking stellar.
I know.
I know I love the story because I loved the story before I was attached to it.
Mhm.
So it's like it has all the elements, and I just find such charm in, for lack of better words, I find such charm in how small it is.
Mhm.
Like it's stripped down, and that was out of necessity, but I think it really adds to show I get exactly what the movie is. There's no distractions in it.
It
I
serves the movie. I know.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And that's, I guess, one piece of advice I would give is like a lot of micro budget filmmakers outright their means. You might have a really good script, but it might not be a good script at that budget. And one of the most fun things I've been reading in reviews is like reviewers who are like, the micro budget nature of this movie really serves it, which is a really lovely compliment. And I just,
Yeah.
I think what it gives the chance to do is let the six of you be so central. And I know you were just humbly saying, like, you can at least say the other five actors are great. I'll go ahead and say all six of you, and I'm going to say the rest of the cast. There are 10 actors total in the movie. It's primarily about the six. Everyone in the movie is great, but especially the six of you. I just like, whenever I feel insecure talking about myself, it's so easy for me to be like, this cast is so good and dialed in and real. And that's why we go to watch movies, really, is to see great performances. And the budget allows you all to be right there in the frame, which is fun.
We have a question coming in from Brandy. For anybody who has questions, get them in now because Jeff is on East Coast time as he's officially made the move east. We miss him out in LA, but that means I don't get him for that much longer. So send in streamlabs.com/Roxy Stryer. Brandy says, I'm so happy to see Jeff here. I remember when Jeff went to go make this movie. I was so happy to get to see this film in Boston with you all, and I felt like a proud sister. I better be first on the list to get a copy when it comes out. LOL. Love you both. Okay, so
I
we can
love
sign her up
Brandy.
for the DVD, the Blu-ray.
Brandy, it's good to see you. I actually got to meet Brandy in person at Christmas Con like 3 years ago, and did a screening. She came to Boston.
Yeah,
Brandy, it's good to see you.
to ECU. Is that where we're at these days?
I know, it's so sad.
Okay, like I said, I know I don't have you for that much longer, but the part that I just still completely is beyond me that I don't know how you did. So finally you do finish the movie and we start submitting to festivals and we're doing very well and we're
Mhm.
winning festivals and you're winning and the cast is winning and the movie's winning. Winning is such a weird word.
But
Placing.
let's say it.
Yeah, but we're
We
winning.
won.
Winning. And then you have to decide how the world gets to see the movie. So
Mhm.
then what? What happens from there?
Yeah, I think like I knew going in, I was like, one of the big goals is like I just want to have a movie that like I can send a link to, like even if it's on YouTube or like VHS, like I want to be able to at least at the end of this process be like, hi person, this is what I do. Like here's a movie. We were gonna put it out even if it was just like on YouTube, but because of our success at our premiere festival, which was in Marina Del Rey, California, it was the Marina Del Rey Film Festival. Like Roxy said, we were like totally shocked, but it was great. We won the whole thing. There's a sales rep. He's a producer's rep, but he's basically an agent who kind of works specifically in this space, like unrepresented independent features, who keeps tabs on festival wins in LA. And he connected with me and I sent him a cut and he really liked it. So it kind of got lucky. It sort of did just like fall in our laps a little bit.
That's super duper not lucky, Jeff. Do you remember the first hour and 7 minutes of this show where you
I guess
talked
you're
about
right. Yeah,
exactly how you
we
got?
worked hard. You're right. You know what? You're right.
Well,
But either
I
way,
just made you go over step by step every decision you made, you and Laura made to get to this point, and then you're like, and then we just got lucky.
I will say it's 99% hard work. I think with any opportunity in this business, there is some luck, a little bit. But it's also you create your own luck, which we did. But either way, I did work my ass off. And I will say, when an agent came to us, I had the feeling of like, we deserve this. You know, comes a certain point in your career, you can like act like really like, I'm so grateful and like lucky. But I also did think like, yeah, like, of course an agent came, like it's time. So what he did was just go out to all the distributors and streamers, and we got 3 deals, and we went with the deal that was best for us.
And how do people make that decision? Like, is somebody talking you through that? Because obviously it's your first time doing it. Do you just go with your gut? Do you consult people? How do you choose if you're lucky enough or if you're skilled enough to get 3 deals?
Yeah. Glenn, I will say he really reps. His name's Glenn Reynolds. His company's called Circus Road Films. And he's told me I can like sing his praises publicly. So he's great. It's interesting though. He's not my agent. He represents movies. So he like comes on the movie, sells it, and then gets off the movie. And he gets a commission of any profit we make, which we'll see still. It's tough for any movie is the truth. Like, you know, Disney is trying to make its money back this year, which gives you an idea of how things are going. So thank you for everyone who's watched it. But he was like really generous and like transparent with what everything meant. And I think he really likes indie filmmakers and he knows it's so predatory that he kind of feels like a protector. So he just was like, gave us all the time in the world to like really help us through, which is amazing.
And now people are able to see it. It comes out and you're starting to get all of Rotten Tomatoes, all of the reviews, the podcasts. People are finally talking about something that you started writing in, I think you said 2018.
Yeah.
How is it going for you this week in the last 7 days?
It feels really good. I think like, again, one of the things I love about filmmaking is like I feel like I get to celebrate like with a lot of people. So like if I see a review, I'm like sending it to everyone because everyone, it's like the reviews tend to praise a lot of elements of the movie, which is really exciting. If I want to give like a vulnerable answer, one of the things that's fun, this sounds silly, but it's just my truth, is like seeing a sentence where they only use my last name makes me feel like a grown-up artist, where it's like,
Totally.
do you know what I mean? Where
Totally.
it'll be like director Jeffrey Crane Graham, blah, blah, blah. And like someone's like, Graham's understanding and nuance with the dialogue was masterful. And like, this is so kind of embarrassing to admit, but like that makes you feel like a real grown-up artist in a way.
I think that is so legitimate because you're being referred to as your last name because
Right.
they theoretically then know who you are, which is just
That's part of it. And it's just like it's that context. I grew up like loving like American literature. So like it'd be like Faulkner does this or like Hemingway's use of character. So it's a little embarrassing to admit, but part of being a writer is like being honest. I think like it's fun to think I'm in like a class of like last name artists a little bit with some of these reviews. So that's been like another fun specific thing that I've like really enjoyed.
We had a question from Mike Joyce, who this will lead us to what's up next, where Mike Joyce said, so when do you two work together again on a project?
It's such a great question.
It is a
Whenever
great
you want.
question. What'd you say?
I said whenever you want.
Yeah, was ditto. Well, I did want to ask you because you did mention earlier. So you're working on a couple different things right now. What can you talk about? What can't you talk about? Well,
It
don't
is
say what you can't
interesting.
talk about.
I want to do a reading with all six of you soon. It is funny because it's like the two things I'm working on are like about high school boys. And I think I just love that age. I like, again, really love coming of age dramedies. But it's hard because I'm like, how does Roxy? I'm like, could she play that? And I'm just like, it's the
Yeah,
hard
we're
thing.
aging ourselves out a little bit of high school at this
A
point.
little, I know. But there's also other part. It is hard. It's funny with the one thing about a first feature is like you all are the first actors that ever made me feel like a real writer director. So you'll always be top of mind when I'm like writing or thinking of things.
Jeff, we didn't make you feel that way. You wrote and directed a movie.
I guess you're right, but still, it's my first one. There's so much imposter syndrome on set, and like most actors want to eat you alive if it's your first movie. And like I didn't have that with the six of you. I felt respected, and it felt like a team. And others, Candace.
I know. I saw Ryan Nelson pop
And I
in
saw
here
Ryan
earlier
Nelson too, who
too.
was on
Hi,
set with us as
Candace.
well.
I think what you're saying is probably accurate, but also a testament to you that I think that you knew this like the back of your hand.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
And I have worked with a lot of first-time directors, especially on shorts, that are flying by the seat of their pants. And I think that is where some of the disrespect from actors does come because they start to feel like they're not in safe hands.
Mhm.
And I don't think that clearly that wasn't a problem on this set. But okay, so you're working on a couple of things.
Yeah,
Also,
I was
Jacob
pitching
in
before the
the chat
strike.
right now too. What's up?
Oh, nice. Oh yeah, Jake. There's one of our Clifton clowns. He's incredible in the movie. Hilarious. I would say, Rox, that like I was pitching something before the strike that I felt like I was getting some good feedback on, and then things have slowed down a little bit. But that doesn't mean they've slowed down. I'm just kind of slowly stepping back in. But yeah, I think like the truth is, in terms of us working together, I will always view you as someone who's like a very important creative companion to me. So like I've read material that I know will get made one day, and like I will just be cheering you on so much that if and when it's going, like I'll just want to help. Like that's how I feel because I love you as a talent so much that like even if I'm not like directly involved in anything you're doing, I'm going to be so invested in it succeeding that's a way that I see us working together, if that makes sense.
He's like, it will not be on an actual thing that I'm directing, but I will be cheering her on from the sidelines.
Well, who
Absolutely.
knows? I mean, it is weird because this thing I'm writing right now, I'm like, I don't with this cast, I'm like, can any of the Lola actors? I'm like, it's a
So
weird
Jeff, are
thing.
you but in terms of in general, I guess for you, are you back to focus primarily on writing? Like is getting in a room something that you're after? Do you want to keep writing indies until you're writing massive budget movies? Do you want to be directing? Do you want to write something somebody else is directing? Do you want to direct something somebody else is writing? What's the goal, the passion?
Yes. I think the truth is I love the idea of getting staff because it's steady work, and I do love TV, but my brain tends to just jump towards features. I did write a pilot this year that I really like. But again, as a sample, it's kind of wacky. It's like a little Russian doll-esque. It's limited. So I don't know. I need to get back to the page. I feel like I've been putting so much time into Lola Press, but I have a feature that's like, go ahead.
Jeff, that's good though. It's what they,
It is good.
it's the thing that we don't do is celebrate the
Yes,
victories.
I know.
And the press isn't just about, it's not like, look at me, look at me. It's about getting your name out there and celebrating what you did. And then of course, creating opportunities for your future self.
Right. You're
Because
right.
you just
No,
made
that's
this
true.
movie. It's not like you've been slacking because you're working on press for Lola.
Yeah, you're right. It's, to answer your question, it's funny because I think a lot of first-time filmmakers want their next thing to like be a Marvel movie, but I really do think of myself as a writer director. I even kind of think of myself as a writer who also loves directing, but a career I love is Sean Baker. I know you're a Florida Project fan. I don't know if you've seen Tangerine, but that's like another amazing movie. I mean, like Red Rocket, I thought was kind of a masterpiece. And
I didn't see Red Rocket. That was that A24 or Neon. I got a screening to that.
I think it's A24. I think since Florida Project, he like is essentially just in the A24 pipeline. But
yeah.
He had made 5 like $50,000 movies before Tangerine.
It's crazy.
And even Tangerine was a $200,000. It was a Duplass movie, but still. And I like don't hate that idea of like just continuing to just make stuff because like you can. And like at this point, it'd probably be easier for me to find funding, but like I don't know if I need to direct a $10 million movie. Like I kind of liked how small our set was, and like you said, it led to a meaningful story. So I don't know.
I think you don't have to know yet, but I could see one day in the not so distant future, Jeff. I think that maybe you will want to do that $10 million movie
Totally.
after you're done. And that's great because you have a long future ahead. Shout out to the man who put me in my first movie, Dom Burns, who did screen Always Lola. He said, "You made a poignant, fun, and beautiful movie, guys, and Roxy Stone Cold movie star. I appreciate you, dear. Miss you dearly." And wow, he put me in my first. You put me in my second. Listen, in good company. Pretty unbelievable. Any final questions? Bring them in now because we are saying bye to Jeff because it is 9:30 almost where he is. And any other projects, things that they can, I know the podcast you talked a little bit about, but things that they can check out of yours, Jeff, for now.
I do want to say for any writer directors who are watching, like I felt like I had a million reasons why I could never do this. But like I just kind of chose not to listen to those and just try it. And like I think a lot of writers especially are told they can't direct because like they don't have like the special invisible thing that directors have, and they're just writers and they should sit in the corner. But I actually find that writers often make the best directors because like you said, Rox, like I did know it like the back of my hand. So I just would really encourage people to like try to bury that fear and instead like listen to the courage that it took for you to get to the page in the first place. And I also just want to quickly shout out Roxy Stryer, who I think is like a revelation in the film. Your character, a lot of the reviews are like she is sometimes quiet and sometimes scared and sometimes big and sometimes on coke. And like basically like you were asked to do 8 like wildly differently pitched scenes that all had the same emotional core, which is just like a big lift. And you're so good in it.
Thanks,
It
Jeff.
was the whole cast is, and again, like it was just so fun to stand at the monitor and be like, these are masters, and you're one of them. And I tell you all the time, but like in terms of just like pound for pound talent, you are one of the most talented people I know.
I really appreciate that. I'm just thinking about as you're talking every moment on set and like even getting there for the first scene. So behind the scenes stuff for you guys. The first scene, if you've seen the movie, the first scene that I shot, I came late to set because I was the last one cast in the movie. And because of that, by the time that I had been cast, I already was supposed to be going home. It was the 10-year anniversary of my mom's passing, and I was in a wedding. And so I am coming to set late. So there's already like camaraderie around the people. And then when I got the rundown of when we were shooting what, Jeff had put the first thing that I was shooting, I was taking my shirt off. If you've seen the movie, you guys know the scene that I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just looking back before this, Jeff, over emails of ours. And Jeff sent me, and like I have a bra on. The movie's very much not that kind
It's
of movie.
PG-13, we'll say.
But he sent me the most like really sweet, thoughtful email about like who did I want on set for that? Do I need a closed set? Like here are the shots of how I'm planning on shooting this. So this was what you'll look like, but then this is what the audience will see, and this is whatever, because that was just the way that the cookie crumbled in terms of what we were shooting first. But coming in, my response to him was something like, LOL, you're precious.
We'll be
Happy
fine.
to shoot this. Happy to shoot this anyway. Thanks so much. Happy to have everybody look at my boobies on set, no matter. Peace.
I did throw you in though.
But you threw me in with a net.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was like your whole jam, the entire set. That you were like, I know this is a big ask, where this is an emotionally demanding movie,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to do all of the work I can to make you guys feel like I've got you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, really important for a first-time director, like truly shocking. Not shocking because it was you, because I knew you would do that, but just I always think of you as a writer because I've read so many of pieces of your work. And this was like, oh shit, he's a director.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really nice, Rox. It's funny because I think part of it too is when you spend this much time, and I've read your work, and I know you're someone who also loves character. You fall in love with the characters too. So it was like, as much as I was feeling protective over you, I was also feeling protective over Lola and Trey in that scene. And like, as much as it's a vulnerable scene for you, it's like really vulnerable for Colin too. Like that's a very intense scene. And so like it's as much the actors as it is like protecting those characters I love that like I knew before anyone was even cast in them. So I think like if you don't love your characters before you get to set, it's going to show up in you resenting your actors. And that's not the actor's fault. It's actually your fault for not having enough affection for the work, I would say too. So that's part of it.
All unbelievable lessons, Jeff. And I think that hopefully for you guys at home, when you're listening to him, maybe you decide to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is
I want to see your movie. And I'll watch any movie anyone sends to me. I really will.
Oh my God. Don't say that.
I know. No, I do. I mean it because it's
you
like
get a lot of sex tapes.
Oh yeah, you're right. I'll watch any like narrative. Porno is narrative still. I'll
watch any independent. No.
I know there's not really
You get what he's saying. Don't abuse what he's saying. You get what he's saying.
Yeah.
I think that's very thoughtful because you know how hard it is. But I do think a lot of people, for some reason, we wait for these signs, and maybe the last hour, 23 minutes and 15 seconds, it was your sign. You at home, maybe this was the thing.
Yeah. And
I hope it is. Every time I talk to Jeff, I think I've sent him this message like 4 times about me making my own movies. And I'm like, I don't get how to do it. Like, how do I do it? And conversations like this, I think, make it a little bit easier to actually visualize and then hopefully actualize. So
it might be that you just haven't written the thing to make yourself yet, too. And I don't know what you've written lately. I adore your work. But part of it too is just like making sure you have the right thing if you're going to do it yourself,
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
Very, very true. Jeffrey Crane Graham, everyone. Yay. Clap at home with me. Jeff, I know it's here that they can find you on your Instagram, but your Twitter, I believe, is just Jeffrey C. Graham.
Yeah, I'm like very inactive on Twitter. I would say IG is the best place to reach me. And you can like DM me there too. I've gotten better I figured out that there's another folder where they can send you if you're not like friends with them. And then I had like 1 billion. So I'm catching up. I'm not great at social, as you can tell. But it's Jeffrey Crane Graham on Instagram.
And what about the podcast? And what about anything else?
Yeah.
And always
Great
Lola.
question.
Plug it away.
Keep listening to Live at the Roxy. I'll be tuned in for best of list this year. I can't wait. For the podcast I co-host and produce, it's called The Screenwriting Life. I am probably like 10% of the voice of the show. It's mostly Meg and Lorian, and they're brilliant. They're mentors. They are both in the credits as a special thanks because they helped me with this movie as well. So
But
that's
you
like a free
produce the show
masterclass
too,
in
Jeff.
writing. Say again, Rox?
You produce the show too, though.
I produce. No, I do. That's my role, is I'm an on-air producer.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great show, and I think like it's a masterclass in writing. It's a really fast crash course, so worth checking out.
Everybody's sending love to you in here. And
I want to say hi to Ryan
appreciate
Nilsson real quick. He's my literal brother. Hello, Ryan. I saw Candace Cruz in here. Candace, I talked you up quite a bit earlier in the show, and I see Brittany Lee, everyone else. Go make your movie, and
Brandy.
I'll watch it.
The best way to support both Jeff and myself right now, if you haven't already, please go rent Always Lola, buy
Bye.
Always Lola. I much prefer you buy it than rent it. Then you can see this mug anytime you want. Please, oh please, if you haven't already. Although I honestly think I'm preaching to the choir right now because you guys have just been so in such a big way showing up every single time one of you guys tags me on Instagram. I am reposting every single post of you guys watching this. It has just been unbelievable to see. You guys always promised that you would support when the movie came out, and then you did, which is fucking cool. And we're super duper grateful for that.
I called Brandy Brittany also.
I know I said Brandy though. I corrected you, but then we kept.
I'm a little. I haven't been sleeping a lot, so Brandy. Obviously, I know who you are. I'm sorry.
My eye is twitching. The sleep is gone. Anyway, thank you, Jeff, for coming on the show. Thank you, everyone at home. I'm going to say goodbye to all of you guys, and I will see you this week. You guys know I'm sporadic with this show now. I always tweet out about it. If you want to know when I'm live, go to my Patreon, and then I always make sure I message it out on there. Okay, later.
Bye, everyone.